lay out a litany of things coming from current research findings that argue for very significant reforms in our preparation programs. For example, one of them is English language learners. And I'm not going to focus on that list today. I just would like to cite something from the whole issue of technology and online learning. And Susan Patrick and Lisa Dawley point out in their paper that there was a meta-analysis that I guess the department conducted, this department, of over 1,000 studies, control studies, so these were not just any studies, that compared online and face-to-face instruction, and the conclusion was that on average, students in online learning conditions perform better than those in face-to-face classes. Think about that finding. That is a very, very significant research finding. And two of the reasons I believe cited were the increased learning time and the learner control in interacting with the media. So I think this is a very major challenge for us as we think about how to redesign preparation programs to prepare teachers who can adopt the best practices in online learning. NCATE has therefore, in response to these kinds of challenges from the policy environment, and certainly some of them are, many of them are international, and Susan really outlined that so well for us. We have been saying the following with regard to how accreditation must function to respond to these challenges. First of all, that accreditation has to be about creating a system of educator preparation that is driven by excellence and not by adequacy. Accreditation, until now, has focused largely on adequacy, on the principle of do no harm. And it's actually instantiated in the law. And many of the licensure tests follow that particular goal. But I think we've reached a point where both the expectations of the policy community and the demands upon the nation to reform our education system are so daunting that we can't tolerate any longer a system in which there's adequacy, where there's a floor, where there are islands of excellence in, dare I say it, a sea of mediocrity. That really is not satisfactory anymore. Secondly, accreditation has been, in the over 100 years that it's existed, very much about two things: balancing accountability, quality assurance, and program improvement. And NCATE has been very much on the side of quality assurance, although it has tried to encourage institutions to engage in continuous improvement. Its system was interpreted, as it existed in the past, as focusing heavily on compliance. In fact, that's sort of a byproduct of accountability systems, that they can drive in unintended focus on compliance rather than on improvement. And so it's our view that schools of education need to model the continuous improvement that we want to imbue in our teacher candidates. And so that's kind of an underlying premise of what we're about. Thirdly, following what the Secretary is saying, although our thinking on this certainly preceded Secretary Duncan's coming to Washington, we really need to focus on more alignment with school districts for this simultaneous transformation. And finally, we're saying to our preparation programs, and we accredit over 700 of them, roughly half those higher ed programs in the country, or institutions that have programs. We're saying to them that they need to systemically redesign their programs. They don't need to focus on one particular piece alone. There needs to be a comprehensive look at their programs, and certainly technology is a big piece of that. What are some other components? I won't take the time to list them all, but a much stronger clinical model needs to be embraced, more along the lines of what we see in the health professions and in some other disciplines. NCATE is about to convene a very distinguished blue ribbon panel. Tom Carroll is a member of the panel to address clinical preparation and partnerships to improve P-12 student learning. There needs to be a much stronger focus in the preparation programs on data-driven assessment and formative assessment. There needs to be more focus on differentiation of instruction to address the needs of diverse learners. It needs to be transformed from a one-size-fits-all kind of focus, which we find at a number of institutions, to one that's more tailored to these changing conditions. And I want to say also that it needs to be a redesign that includes a much stronger evidentiary base on the effectiveness of the candidates who are produced. A stronger evidentiary base while those candidates are in the program and as they graduate, and then following them into the field. And right now we certainly see excellent examples of one or more of these components in programs. We do see some programs that seem to embrace in an exemplary way most, if not all, of these, but we don't see that as the norm. And that is really what must change. Some of our institutions are already, for example, working very closely with P-12 schools to partner on improving P-12 student achievement. And when we rolled out our redesign at our press briefing in Washington in June, we did give some examples of those. Certainly we're going to look at our standards and how those standards might be improved. We're working very closely with the specialty area associations and National Council Teacher of English is represented here. Kent is here, and I know Don is here from ISTE. We have over 20 of these specialty area associations, and their standards are very important in driving this kind of reform, because most states, in fact, align with the disciplinary association standards or adopt them. But I think from NCATE's perspective, the standards alone are not going to take us where they need to go. Just as the P-12 standards movement of the late 80s and 90s has not taken us as far as we need to go. So we thought about how to redesign our processes, and we have a couple of options that we're giving institutions. And the first of these is to say to institutions, it's no longer satisfactory for you to be reaccredited by demonstrating that you're adequate with respect to the 6 standards. We would like you to take one or more of the standards and drive toward excellence, drive toward target level performance on those standards. NCATE has 3 levels on its rubrics: unacceptable, acceptable, and target level performance. And an example of this might be our diversity standard 4D, where we articulate at the target level that we would expect candidates to interact with a range of diverse students and to develop strategies for improving P-12